The last thing I felt from my husband was the warmth of his thumb brushing my cheek. "Stay close," Evan whispered, his voice vibrating with that effortless CEO charisma. He adjusted his cufflinks, flashing the watch I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary. "I can't do this without you." "Sophia." I believed him. I always did. I stayed in the wings of the Denver auditorium, a shadow supporting the sun. Outside the curtain, 500 employees and a row of predatory investors waited for the news that would solidify our IPO. This was our Mount Everest moment. Evan stepped into the light. The applause was a physical wall of sound. I watched his silhouette, strong, reliable. The man I shared a bed with. He started with the usual rhetoric: integrity, innovation, responsibility. Then, the air in the room died. Growth requires pruning. Evan's voice turned cold, clinical. Transparency is the only way forward. We have discovered a $20 million leak in our operational budget. The giant screen behind him flickered. I froze. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a series of screenshots from my private laptop, internal memos, wire transfer approvals, my digital signature, bold and damning, flashed in high definition. "The person responsible for this breach of trust," Evan said, pausing with the precision of a practiced executioner, "is my wife and COO, Sophia Hale." The silence that followed was more violent than a scream. I didn't breathe. I watched my life turn into a crime scene in real time. My phone buzzed in my pocket once. Twice the haptic feedback of my credentials being revoked. Access denied. Identity erased. As security approached me not with handcuffs, but with the quiet, firm presence of men removing trash, I looked at Evan. He didn't look back. He was already talking about corrective measures. I realized then this wasn't a mistake. It was a ritual. He didn't need a partner. He needed a body to throw into the gears so the machine could keep turning. I walked out of the auditorium through a gauntlet of pity and disgust. As the heavy doors clicked shut behind me, the applause for his honesty began again. The man I loved had just murdered my reputation to save his stock price. And the worst part, he had used my own hands to sharpen the blade. The lobby of Hale Global didn't smell like betrayal. It smelled like expensive espresso and floor wax. I reached for my badge out of muscle memory. The reader didn't beep. It let out a flat, mechanical rasp. A red light blinked steady, cold, and final. I tried again, my heart hammering against my ribs. Access denied. My phone buzzed in my hand. One by one, the icons for my work apps vanished. My email, my calendar, my encrypted files gone. The screen flickered and died. Evan hadn't just fired me, he had performed a digital lobotomy. "Sophia," I turned. Sarah, the receptionist who had sent me flowers on my birthday for 3 years, wouldn't look at me. She was staring at a spot 6 inches above my shoulder. "HR is in the small conference room." "Sophia, they asked that you don't go upstairs. The small conference room. The one with no windows. The one we used for firing people we didn't want the rest of the office to see." I turned to leave, my pride a jagged shard in my throat. When I saw her, Maya, a junior analyst I'd mentored, was standing by the glass doors, her personal belongings shoved into a pathetic cardboard box. She was trembling. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. She stepped toward me, her voice a frantic whisper. "They cut me because I flagged the logs. Sophia, I tried to tell the CFO there were irregularities in the auto approvals. My pulse spiked. What logs? Maya, the vendor payments." She hissed, glancing nervously at the security guard. "The rules were modified from your terminal. Last Thursday, at 9 p.m., a cold sweat broke across my neck. Last Thursday at 9 p.m., Evan and I were at Linger, celebrating our anniversary. I hadn't touched my laptop, but Evan had forgotten his phone in the car and borrowed my bag to go grab it. He had been gone for 20 minutes. "They used you," Maya whispered, her eyes filling with tears, "and they used me to cover the trail." The security guard cleared his throat. Moving toward us, Maya flinched, grabbed her box, and vanished into the Denver morning. I stood alone in the center of the lobby, the building I helped build, humming with a life that no longer recognized me. I wasn't just a wife or an executive anymore. I was a ghost in my own empire. The house was silent, but it wasn't the peaceful quiet of a home. It was the clinical silence of a funeral parlor. Evan was in the kitchen, casually decanting a Bordeaux as if he hadn't just incinerated my soul on a jumbotron. He had already poured 2 glasses, one for him, one for the ghost he expected me to be. "Sit down, Sophia," he said. His voice was terrifyingly steady, the same tone he used to close Series B funding. He didn't offer an apology. He offered a folder. I didn't sit. I opened it standing up. On the left, a divorce decree, cold and surgical. On the right, a non-disclosure agreement so restrictive, it practically forbade me from whispering my own name in my sleep. $5 million, Evan said, swirling his wine, plus the villa in Tuscany. It's already titled in your maiden name. You leave tomorrow, you disappear, and the board drops the internal investigation. And if I stay and fight, I asked, my voice trembling with a rage I was fighting to harness, then I can't protect you. He finally looked at me, his eyes wide with a faked, watery sincerity. The evidence is already with the auditors. If you stay, you aren't just fired, you're a felon. I'm giving you a life. Sophia, take the money and go. He stepped closer, reaching out to touch my hair. I flinched as if his fingers were red-hot needles. Don't be emotional, he whispered. A classic CEO tactic to dismiss a woman's intuition. Think of the future we talked about. This is just corporate restructuring. For us, I looked at the man I had loved for a decade and realized I was looking at a predator who had mistaken me for prey. He wasn't trying to save us. He was buying my silence because he knew I was the only person smart enough to find where he'd hidden the bodies. I didn't sign. I didn't scream. I simply closed the folder and pushed it back across the marble. You're right, Evan, I said, my voice finally finding its edge. This isn't personal. It's war. I walked out, leaving the wine untouched. Behind me, I heard the glass shatter against the floor. The truth didn't hide in the company's servers. It was buried in the one place Evan called my paranoia. I pulled the encrypted drive from its hiding spot, a hollowed-out book on a shelf he never touched. He used to laugh when he saw me backing up my logs. Sophia, we're a team. He'd say, kissing my temple, trust the system we built. Now, as the drive hummed to life in my dimly lit home office, I realized the system was a gallows, and he'd been tying the noose for years. I bypassed the surface files and dove into the raw metadata. The smart contracts were a bloodbath of digital forgery. My signature was everywhere authorizing offshore shell companies, bypassing procurement limits, rerouting the Series C funding. I cross-referenced a timestamp, October 14th, 11:34 p.m. I remembered that night. We were at a cabin in Aspen, no cell service, just a fireplace and a bottle of scotch. My laptop was in his bag. I'd fallen asleep in his arms, feeling safe while I slept. My signature had moved $4 million to a Cayman account. Another entry, my birthday, while I was blowing out candles. I was approving a fraudulent vendor contract. It wasn't just a frame-up. It was a masterpiece. He hadn't reacted to a mistake. He had engineered an entire alternate history where I was a greedy, calculating thief. The logic changes went back 24 months incremental, quiet, and perfectly legal on paper. A sudden chill crawled up my spine. The cursor on my screen began to move. I wasn't alone in the file. A chat window popped up on my desktop. No username, just a single line of text that turned my blood to ice. Some ghosts are better left buried. Sophia, go to Tuscany while you still can. My webcam light flickered on a tiny, judgmental green eye. He was watching me. Right now. I slammed the laptop shut and ripped the drive out. My heart wasn't racing. It was hardening into a diamond. He thought he'd built a trap. He forgot that I was the one who wrote the code. Arthur Bell didn't offer me coffee, and he certainly didn't offer me sympathy. His office, overlooking Civic Center Park, smelled of old leather and expensive cynicism. He didn't read the files I gave him. He dissected them with a silver letter opener, his eyes tracking lines of code like a predator scenting blood. "You're not here because you're innocent, Sophia," he said, finally looking up. His eyes were the color of a winter sky. "In this town, innocence is just a lack of evidence. You're here because you want to survive the collision." "I have the logs," I countered, my voice tight. "The timestamps prove I couldn't have signed those transfers." Arthur let out a dry, rattling laugh. "In a courtroom, your logs are just files on a drive you controlled. A jury won't see a frame-up. They'll see a COO who was smart enough to build herself an alibi. If you fight the theft, you'll lose. The signatures are yours. The law doesn't care about your heart, it cares about your encryption key." The room felt suddenly cold. Then what am I supposed to do? Sit back and let him send me to prison? Arthur leaned forward, the shadow of a smile playing on his lips. "You don't fight the crime, Sophia. You hijack the motive. Evan doesn't care about $20 million. He cares about the $4 billion he'll get when Hale Global goes public next month." He tapped the folder. "The SEC hates a mystery. You don't need to prove you're a saint. You just need to make the theft loud enough, messy enough, and unexplainable enough that the IPO becomes radioactive. You aren't a defendant anymore. You're a structural flaw." I saw it then. The shift from defense to leverage. I didn't need to clear my name. I needed to threaten his empire. "He'll come for you," Arthur warned. "Not as a husband, but as a cornered animal. Let him," I said, my voice finally finding its steel. As I hit the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. A calendar invite from Evan's private assistant flashed on the screen. Subject: coffee, 8 a.m. Let's fix this. The predator was starting to realize the trap had a hole in it. Evan sat in the corner booth of the quiet Denver cafe, looking every bit the grieving widower of a corporate tragedy. He had ordered my favorite, a flat white with an extra shot, and placed it on my side of the table. A peace offering from a man who had already declared war. "You look tired, Sophia," he said, his voice dripping with a rehearsed, honeyed concern. I sat down, letting my movements appear heavy. Defeated. "I'm done fighting. Evan, I just want to know how it ends." He leaned back, his posture relaxing as the CEO mask slipped slightly. He thought he had won. "It ends with you in Tuscany, Sophia. Rich, beautiful, and silent. It's a good life. I'll sign," I whispered, keeping my eyes on the coffee. "But I need the truth first. Why me? Why not a shell company? Why not a CFO error?" Evan smiled, and for the first time, I saw the vacuum where his heart should have been. "Because you were the only one with enough integrity to make the lie believable. If I blamed a ghost, the SEC would keep digging. But you're the principled wife who made a tragic mistake. The story is so perfect, no one will ever look for a second chapter. So I was just an architectural necessity," I said, my voice flat. "You were the perfect sacrifice," he corrected gently, as if explaining a business strategy. "I knew you wouldn't make a scene. You hate messes. Sophia, I knew you'd take the quiet exit to protect what we built." I nodded slowly. Every word was being captured by the microscopic lens pinned to my lapel. Evan wasn't just admitting to a frame-up. He was admitting to a premeditated psychological hit. "You really thought you knew me," I said, standing up. He didn't notice the change in my tone. He was already checking his watch. "The documents will be at Arthur's office by noon. Don't be late." I walked out into the crisp Colorado air, the recording burning a hole in my pocket. Evan thought he had traded his wife for a $4 billion IPO. He had no idea he had just handed me the detonator. I didn't leak the recording to the tabloids. That would be messy. And as Evan so pointedly noted, I hate a mess. Instead, I sent it to the only people who feared the truth more than he did, the lead underwriters of the IPO. Then, I opened my laptop and went to work. Deep within the core of Hale Global's operating system sat a dormant failsafe I'd nicknamed the Oversight Ghost. It was a high-level governance protocol I'd written years ago to freeze all assets in the event of a catastrophic audit failure. Evan had forgotten it existed. He always viewed code as a tool for profit. I viewed it as a tether for morality. I entered the 64-character override key. My heart didn't race. My fingers didn't tremble. I was simply executing a command. Execute global compliance freeze. With one keystroke. The empire went dark, across Denver. In the high-rise offices of Hale Global, every smart contract stalled. Every automated wire transfer hit a digital wall. The system was now in read-only mode. It wouldn't allow Evan or his sister, the CFO, to move a single cent or delete a single log until an independent third-party audit was completed. My phone disintegrated into a frenzy of notifications. The first call was from Claire, Evan's sister. She didn't lead with hello. She led with a scream. Sophia, what have you done? The system is locked. We have a $40 million margin call in 10 minutes. The protocol is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Claire, I said, my voice as cool as the mountain air. It's protecting the investors from internal operational failures. Isn't that what Evan told the world I was? Undo it now. I can't. I lied. Though it was a beautiful lie. The encryption is decentralized. Only a full forensic audit can unlock the vault now. I hung up. I didn't need to do anything else. The system I built was now a witness. And for the first time in 2 years, it was telling the truth without Evan's permission. The morning was supposed to belong to the opening bell. Instead, it belonged to the sirens. I stood across the street from Hale Global, a paper cup of coffee in my hand, watching the choreography of a collapse. Black SUVs swarmed the curb like sharks scenting a wound. Men in windbreakers marked FBI and SEC moved through the glass revolving doors. Inside, the celebration banners were still hanging. Mocking the panic below, I saw Evan through the lobby window. He was trying to use his CEO voice handout. Chest puffed until a federal agent spun him around. The click of the handcuffs was invisible from here, but I felt it in my marrow. He looked around wildly, his eyes searching the crowd. He wasn't looking for a lawyer. He was looking for the wife who was supposed to be his shield. I didn't stay to watch him be loaded into the car. I had an appointment in the parking garage. I found Claire, the CFO, near the service exit. She was frantic. Throwing a designer suitcase into the back of her Porsche, the oversight ghost protocol had locked her out of the offshore accounts, and she looked like a woman who had realized her parachute was just a backpack full of rocks. Going somewhere. Claire, I asked, stepping out from behind a concrete pillar. She jumped, her face pale and glistening with sweat. Sophia, get out of my way. I can fix this. I can tell them it was all Evan. Just let me pass. You spent 2 years helping him bury my name, I said, my voice steady as a heartbeat. You didn't just watch. You held the shovel. I'll give you half, she hissed, reaching for the car door. 10 million. Just move. I don't want your money. Claire, I want the logs. I pointed to the encrypted drive she was clutching. And so do the agents waiting at the end of the ramp. Her eyes went wide. She looked toward the exit just as the blue and red lights began to strobe against the garage walls. She collapsed against the car, the drive sliding from her fingers. The empire hadn't just fallen. It had been dismantled by the very hands that built its foundation. I walked away before they reached her, the sound of her crying echoing in the hollow concrete. The boardroom was a tomb of expensive mahogany and desperate men. The air was heavy with the scent of cold coffee and failure. Only half the chairs were occupied. The rest of the seats belonged to executives who were currently being questioned in separate rooms. As I walked in, the remaining directors straightened, their eyes tracking me with a mixture of reverence and terror. Sophia, the chairman began, his voice trembling with a forced, practiced warmth. Thank God you're here. The markets are in free fall. The lead underwriters are threatening to pull the plug entirely. I didn't sit. I stood at the head of the table Evan's seat and looked at them. These were the same people who had avoided my gaze a week ago when security escorted me out. We've had an emergency vote. A woman from the audit committee spoke up, sliding a leather-bound folder toward me. We want to appoint you interim CEO, effective immediately. Full autonomy. a massive retention bonus. We'll even let you write the press release detailing your heroic return to fix Evan's mess. I looked at the contract. It was a gilded cage. They didn't want a leader. They wanted a mascot. They wanted my reputation to act as a bandage for their hemorrhaging stock price. You sat in this room while Evan blamed me for a $20 million oversight. I said, my voice echoing in the hollow room. You saw the logs I sent. You saw the truth. And yet, you waited until the FBI arrived to call me. We were following protocol. Sophia, the chairman stammered. Now, we're offering you the crown. I don't want a crown made of thorns, I replied, pushing the folder back. You're not asking me to lead. You're asking me to be the face of a lie so you can keep your bonuses. I'm not your savior, and I'm certainly not your sacrifice. If you walk out, someone hissed, this company dies. Then let it, I said, turning toward the door. Some things are too broken to be fixed. They need to be replaced. I walked out, leaving the most powerful people in Denver staring at an empty chair. For the first time in years, I didn't care about the stock price. I only cared about the air in my lungs. The divorce was finalized in a room that smelled of dust and old ink. Evan wasn't there. He was wearing a different kind of suit now, one provided by the state. His lawyer sat across from me, his eyes fixed on the floor, handing over the final documents like they were radioactive. I signed my name for the last time as Sophia Hale, with a single stroke of a pen. The legal tether snapped. The $5 million, the villa, the hush money. I'd rejected it all in favor of a smaller, cleaner settlement from the liquidation of my own shares. I didn't want his blood money. I wanted my soul back. I walked out into the Denver morning. The air was bitingly cold, the kind of cold that makes you feel alive. I stood in front of the glass tower that used to house our dreams. The Hale Global sign was being dismantled, the letters swinging precariously from a crane. It was a hollow shell, just like the man who built it. I pulled a photo from my pocket, the one from our wedding in Vail. We looked so happy, so invincible. I didn't feel anger looking at it. I felt a strange, distant pity for the woman in that dress who didn't know she was marrying her own executioner. I tore the photo into a dozen pieces and let the wind carry them toward the mountains. My phone buzzed. A news alert: Evan Hale sentenced to 12 years. I swiped it away. His life was a closed book. Mine was a blank page. I learned that freedom isn't the absence of struggle. It's the refusal to be the sacrifice in someone else's story. If a system requires a victim to survive, it deserves to burn. And if a man asks you to disappear so he can shine, he's not a partner, he's a shadow. I am Sophia again. Just Sophia. I am difficult, dangerous, and principled. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel the need to apologize for any of it.